have to say some of my fellow Hampshire mayors have recounted some very embarrassing moments when their colleagues have forgotten that they can be seen and heard by everyone. So there's your warning. Can councillors ensure that their mobile phones are now switched off or on silent, along with any other devices that could interfere with the proceedings? Councillors will turn on their video link during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless they have been invited to speak by me as the chair. Councillors are reminded that if they switch off their video link or move away from the camera, they will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part in any vote on the item under discussion. Councillors can indicate their wish to speak by pressing on the raise hand button and should only speak when I invite them to do so. Officers present will only switch their video link on during the proceedings when they are presenting or where they wish to be invited to speak by me as chair. So we have one visiting speaker this evening, and I will confirm his name at the appropriate time in the agenda, and he will address the council by audio link. Just before we get to the main business, I'll be asking councillors to declare any pecuniary or personal interest they may have on any agenda item. When the item comes up on that agenda, the councillors who have declared an interest should switch off their video link for the duration of that item and switch it back on again when I call the next item on the agenda. Voting will be taken by a roll call, and I will confirm the recommendation proposed to the council before the voting begins. Before voting commences, all councillors will be asked to turn their microphones on. Each councillor will then be asked to indicate whether they are for or against the recommendation or whether they wish to abstain. And once they've cast their vote, councillors should switch their microphones off. Hopefully, we will not have any IT problems tonight, but can I remind councillors, officers and guests that if their connection is lost, that they should immediately advise the Democratic Support Officer in the details provided and use their meeting link to access the meeting again. So my sincere apologies for that very lengthy preamble. It's all over now, and we're going to proceed as far as possible in the usual way. And so before we start any business, may I invite the Mayor's Chaplain, Dr. Andy Taylor, to say a few words and pray. Thank you, Andy.
Good evening. These are strange circumstances, aren't they? For many of us, this is a difficult time. Even with the easing of lockdown restrictions, one gets the feeling that face masks and social distancing are here with us for some time to come. And I must say, I shudder every time I hear someone use the phrase, the new normal. But there's a verse of scripture that I always go to at times like this, and that's from Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 to 7. It says this: "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." Whenever we have anxieties, we can bring them to God, but we're invited to do so with thanksgiving, and gratitude and thanksgiving are key in every situation. There's always something somewhere where we can be grateful, whatever our circumstances. And even neuroscientists are now saying that if we spend a few minutes each day being thankful in our lives, that whatever our age, new neuron paths are created in our brains, which gradually build up to give us a much more positive outlook on life with less stress. I must say, science generally catches up with the Bible at some stage. But the outcome of this is that when we bring our concerns to God with this thanksgiving, we can leave them there and we go out with the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. This isn't a peace we have because everything is going well, but a peace in the midst of the storm when we should be tearing our hair out, but somehow we are not. So let's pray together. Father God, I just want to thank you for this amazing town of Basingstoke. It's a great place and we're grateful to live here. Thanks for all the councillors, the council officers, the elected members, the council officers. And we pray for these and any members of the public who may be listening as we reflect with gratitude on the many good things in our lives, and we bring before you the concerns and anxieties for the things we face. We pray that you'll grant us that peace that surpasses all understanding. We pray for this council meeting that despite the strange circumstances, your peace will overshadow all the proceedings this evening, and that wise decisions will be taken. Amen.
Thank you very
Amen.
much. Thank you. Thank you. We all say amen. Let's move to the first item on tonight's agenda, which is to receive apologies for absence. Obviously, I'm assuming that everyone who wants to be here is here, but let's just go to the group leaders to ask if anybody is absent. Councillor Rattigan first. Could you unmute and let me know if there are any apologies from your group?
No, I have no. I think everybody will be with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Likewise, Councillor McCormick. Councillor McCormick, can you unmute?
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
unmute. Yeah, I'm on my iPad and it doesn't have an unmute button. It waits until you touch the screen. Councillor Ruth Cooper, sadly she's ill. Councillor Sean Keating is with me, but he can't get a login.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's nice to have him anyway. He can listen in at least, can't he? Thank you.
Okay.
And if you see Councillor Cooper, can you send her our very best wishes? We know she's been really ill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Mark Taylor is probably working as well, so he may not be with us. I haven't got the multi-screen up, so I can't see who's in the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. Councillor Tilbury, do you have any absentees? Councillor Tilbury, can you unmute?
Given the circumstances, do you want to give me a call back if we can get Sean in?
Okay. Okay, let's move on to Councillor Gavin James.
We're all here.
Brilliant. Good to hear. Thank you.
Last time I scrolled across, we were all here. We could have dropped out. I don't know, but we were here briefly.
Thank you very much. And I know our one independent member, Councillor Reid, is present as well. So let's move on to item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Can you indicate electronically if you wish to declare an interest in any item on the agenda? So raise your hand electronically if you wish to say anything at this stage. Councillor Michael Westbrook.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It was actually a bit of a delay there. It was in relation to apologies for absence. Councillor Cousins did inform Democratic Services that he's running late and he should be with us by 7:30.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
It didn't come through quick enough.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm assuming that there are no declarations of interest. So we'll move on to item number 3. Minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of February 2020. These can be found on pages 7 to 32 of your agenda book. Unless anybody raises a hand to say that they're not accurate, I'll move these from the chair.
I'll second them.
Thank you very much. So the minutes have been moved and seconded as accurate. Thank you. Item number 4 is announcements. And can I invite the Chief Executive, Mel Barrett, to give his announcements first, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I just one short announcement from me. I'd just like to confirm to all members that I will be leaving the authority at the end of August, and therefore my last full council with you will be full council next month. And I'd just like to confirm that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will all be wishing you very well. We'll have an opportunity to do that at the next meeting. You'll be sadly missed. So I do have 1 or 2 announcements to make myself. There are just 1 or 2 things I'd like to say. Firstly, of course, I need hardly say that a lot has changed since we last met as a full council back in February. I want to thank officers for their hard work since the coronavirus emergency became critical. We have seen them swing into action and adjust in so many ways in order to keep the business and activity of our council running as efficiently as is possible in these unusual times. Out in the borough, a multitude of individuals, groups, organisations and charities have also leapt into action to serve those people in need of help whilst in lockdown, creating layers of help that have hopefully caught everyone in need in the net of care. It has been truly amazing and encouraging to see how between us all, in our various ways, this borough has handled the emergency. Of course, there is a long way to go, and there will be a lot more to do as we discover the fallout for many people as life begins to return to normal. The amazing cooperative drive to relieve human suffering that we've seen over the past few weeks is very much my thing. You might not remember what my mayoral theme was last year, but it's working together for the good of all, and that remains the theme for the coming year as well. And that theme has become very real and very significant over the last few weeks. And it's my heartfelt hope that when all this is over, we remain community spirited, with our goal being the good of the people we are serving, not our own kudos and reputations. When we work together for the good of all, we are so much more effective as co-workers and not rivals. On another very sad subject, I did send my condolences to my counterpart in Reading after hearing of the horrific terrorist attack there. It becomes all too real when something like this happens almost on our doorstep. Another theme that I must mention, and which has affected us here in this borough over the past few weeks since the horrific death of George Floyd in the USA on the 25th of May, is the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the spotlight that has been shone on the subject of racism. This is a really sensitive issue for all of us. The way forward isn't obvious, but as a first step, Councillor Bound and I have had an initial meeting with one or two people, including the two leaders of one of the local anti-racism groups and Basingstoke's police commander, just to open the conversation and begin to explore the way forward for us. And finally, it's Armed Forces Week this week. We broadcast a brief flag-raising ceremony on Monday, and on Saturday, the actual Armed Forces Day, there'll be further output on social media. Thank you for listening. On to agenda item 5. This is the item where we ask any members of the public if they have questions, and we have one question tonight. Can I invite Mr. Alex Lee to open his microphone and ask his question? Welcome, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. The Gazette recently reported that the Deputy Mayor deleted a tweet suggesting that Andrew Banks urinating by PC Keith Palmer's memorial was a setup. Does this council agree that somebody expected to be next year's mayor should not espouse these opinions, potentially bringing the borough and the office of mayor into disrepute? And on this basis, should the decision to appoint her as mayor next year be reconsidered?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Can I invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor Rattigan, to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I appreciate your involvement tonight and your participation in our council meeting. The full council will take a view when it elects the mayor at the next annual general meeting, which will take place in May 2021. I note, as we all note, that unfortunately councillors are prone to errors sometimes. I know a number of councillors who are with us tonight very much regret their time as Labour Party members. So we are all in the same boat.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Mr. Lee, do you have a supplementary question to ask?
Hello, sorry, yes, I do have a supplementary. Considering that people like the mayor and the deputy mayor are certainly ones that young people and people across the borough should be looking up to, do we think that somebody who, and this isn't just one tweet or two tweets that have been deleted, if you scroll through her complete timeline, there are undertones of other racist behaviour, should even be considered in this matter?
Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you for your supplementary. Nobody supports racism or any homophobic reaction. But I believe that the people of Basingstoke will judge us all at an election next May, and we will take their view to heart as to whether people are fit to serve this borough or not. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for coming. We'll now move on to agenda item 6, which is petitions. We do have one petition.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Can the leader explain why he referenced Labour Party members? He's named my group. What's that got to do with that question? I do not like our group being besmirched in a public meeting.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I think that probably does merit an answer from Councillor Rattigan, if you wouldn't mind.
I was saying that some individuals regret their time as Labour Party members. That was all, Andy. Your group currently, I support in their democratic right to join us, and I have always been supportive of every councillor of whatever colour in this council.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Thank you for your comment, Councillor McCormick. Now I will move on to petitions. We have a petition, and that's from the Parish Council and residents of Oakley. It's to be presented virtually, of course, to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Natural Environment. As for me, as one of the councillors for that ward, I will just read out the subject of the petition. The petition, signed by 762 local residents, is to call upon the Cabinet Member for Planning and all other councillors and officers involved in planning to enable us in Oakley to preserve our historic village. The village of Oakley must not expand any further through housing developments. Oakley, with its beautiful conservation area and history dating back to the Domesday Book, has managed to retain its character as a village, despite growing more than tenfold since the commencement of Basingstoke's expansion. However, further growth will make this impossible to sustain. We appreciate that housing is needed and will continue to cooperate in achieving this, but not by allowing the village itself to expand any further. Oakley's infrastructure is already inadequate, and further growth will destroy our community. So thank you, everyone. That is the petition, and it is virtually handed out, and I will obviously physically hand it over to the appropriate cabinet member when I'm able to. Moving on to item number 7, urgency powers and virtual meetings. This report by the Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer can be found on pages 33 to 134 of the agenda book. This is to ensure that we have in place the necessary emergency measures to enable council business to proceed during the pandemic, obviously already started. And also, obviously, if there's any future emergency, these will be in place. So the actual recommendation can be found on page 33. I intend to move this, but I'll just give you a moment to find it and then to just say if there are any dissenters. Councillor Paul Frankham, do you have a comment?
Just a quick one. It showed up at the beginning of this meeting. There's normally a number of us that are racists that stand outside and are not present for the prayers. So you maybe want to do a policy for that.
No, I wanted to ask you something. Did you say you could come in? No, I'm in a meeting.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Councillor Frankham. We will look at that, obviously.
And I've seconded it.
So if there are no other, could you lower your hand first, Councillor? Thank you. And can I move this from the chair?
And I'll second it.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands raised, so I will take that as agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 8. This is the pay policy statement for 2020 to 2021, which has been implemented since the 1st of April and was in the paper sent out for our cancelled meeting. So this is retrospective. This is a recommendation from the Human Resources Committee. Can I ask either Councillor Rattigan or Councillor Edwards to say something by way of introduction?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this pay policy statement was in front of you in the papers that were handed out for the March meeting. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, it was cancelled. I hope that you've all read it. It is a short paper because it has been implemented over 2 months ago and was recommended and approved by the HR committee under the leadership of Councillor Laura Edwards. I am happy with it. I hope that you will all be too. I hope there is nothing contentious in it, and I'm happy to support anything that is asked of me on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gary Watts, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you see and hear?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Cool. I'd like to talk about settlement agreements, which is in this actual paper. It states here that severance packages over £100,000 should go to full council. And as members will be aware, back in 2019, we had 2 senior members of the council were given severance packages, and one of those officers had a package of over £100,000. I've done a word search within the council documents, and I can't find any reference of it actually going to the full council meeting. All I can find is it went to the HR committee on the 18th of March 2019, where the council allocated £299,000 out of its revenue budget. So this £100,000 settlement for one of the officers was not debated by full council. I believe there is a democratic deficit there. There's a lack of transparency, and we're talking about an awful lot of money. I'd like to know why full council was not allowed to look at the severance packages for that particular officer who was given over £100,000 of taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. I was not aware that the discussions, because obviously there was an election last year, that it didn't come back to full council. My apologies if it was meant to. I shall get you a written response from the HR director, but also just to remind you that under this administration, we will be taking a closer look at all severances to make sure that they are aligned with the either loss of job or the impact on the individual. So please be aware that the HR committee on which I sit will have greater overseeing powers. I hope that helps.
Do we have any other speakers to this one? I understand that this is included in the pay policy structure as being required for the future. Is that correct? So if we can vote this in and note that it will be required in the future, that approval will be required for such severance payments. Now we had it moved, and we haven't had it seconded. I'm assuming, Councillor Rattigan, that you've moved this, have you?
I'm happy to do so, and I hope that the Chair of HR will second.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you very much. Now, as I can't see you all and say, are we all happy for this? And as we've had one person who has dissented, I think we were going to have to take this to a vote, just for clarity, so that you all have an opportunity to express what you think. Unless, Councillor Watts, you're satisfied that what's included in the pay policy now it reassures you for the future. Councillor Watts, can you unmute?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not dissent from the paper. I support the 2%. If we had a Labour council, we'd be giving our employees more than 2% because they're worth it. But yes, I support the paper. I was just pointing out this discrepancy where the government says we should be, full council should be looking at severance packages of over £100,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And that is included in the actual policy. So if you're not actually dissenting and there is nobody else who is putting their hand up, can we all agree that this is passed? Thank you very much. I'm taking that you are saying agreed if you haven't put your hand up already, okay? This is the way we're going to have to do it for now. It's not quite as homely as how we do it in the council chamber, but it seems to work. in a clunky sort of way. Thank you very much indeed. Can we move on now to item number 9, members' allowances for 2020-2021. This is again retrospective. The award has already begun. The recommendation can be found on page 161 of the agenda papers, and this is held over from our cancelled meeting, and it has been circulated, so you should have had an opportunity to see it, and it will be reviewed again anyway after next year's elections. I'm just going to pause just to see if anybody wishes to speak. If they don't, obviously I will just move it from the chair. Okay, thank you. So there seems to be no dissent. So I will move this from the chair.
And I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That one is carried. Now, we move on to the committee and appointment matters 2020-2021. We come to the appointments to committees and committee chairs, etc., that we would have approved in May, but here we are in June. The recommendation is fourfold, and I'll take them one at a time. It can be found, the whole recommendation can be found on page 173 of the agenda book. And can I note again that at this stage, if all are agreed, I will take it that we are, unless someone raises their virtual hand again. Okay. Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You'll see item 4 to approve the revised calendar for meetings 2020-2021. When you look at that meeting calendar, it clearly states meetings to commence at 18:30, and that was agreed at the last full council because audit and accounts had always been an anomaly held during the day, which obviously meant that some members could never possibly get there. Now, the chairman of that committee, of his own volition, it would appear, decided to move that meeting back to 2:30 because obviously full council hadn't agreed this, so I suppose he probably could. Didn't consult me apart from apologising afterwards when I said I couldn't make it. Obviously that was a bit rude because I can't now go to that meeting because he's chosen to change it. Now, obviously, whilst tonight we are approving the existing chairs of committees, the Conservatives do not have a majority. And I think there's been a demonstration in the number of meetings cancelled, moved and whatever, an element of arrogance from some chairmen about the way they treat committees. We are in a position now as an opposition to unite and remove any chairman when we think they're not playing fair and they're being arrogant in their behaviour. So I'll agree to the papers, but I want to put that out there just as a warning because moving committee meetings so what certain members can't attend is unfair.
Thank you very much, Councillor James. That is noted. We'll be coming to that later on. I'm just going to do the first one first then. This is the first recommendation, which is to approve changes to committee places and to confirm existing appointments. And you can see this at Appendix 1 on pages 177 to 181. I think the best way of doing this is just to ask each group leader in turn if they propose any changes. And these are obviously mostly internal changes within the group. But for clarity, can I therefore invite, first of all, Councillor Rattigan, do you propose any changes to committee places?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I only have one. It's been already informed to Democratic Services. It is on CEP. It is the installation of Councillor Elaine Still for Councillor Stuart Frost. All the vice chairs are the decision for the committee themselves, and therefore I will not influence them.
Of course. Thank you very much. That's understood. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ruth Cooper to come off DC for July to be replaced by Jane Frankham.
Thank you very much. That's understood. Councillor Tilbury, do you propose any changes for your group?
No, not as far as I'm aware. We're perfectly happy. They've already changed a few at the last meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Gavin James, do you propose any for your group?
No changes.
Thank you. Therefore, we will take that as read, and I'll move on to the next part of the recommendation, which is to look at places on outside bodies. The existing appointments are listed on page 187 to 189. Now, can I ask you to peruse the list and note each body against which there is a star And that means that the existing representative has to be reappointed for the next term of office. There are also a couple of vacancies. Now, as I don't have the facility to quickly note if you're all agreed, what I'm going to do is read the list of outside bodies whose representatives need to be reappointed. And can you just put up your virtual hand if you're not happy for it to carry on and you'd like to propose somebody else? And I'll also flag up actual vacancies as well as we go. So I'll move reasonably slowly down the list of the ones where we just have to decide if a councillor is continuing or not. First of all, Aldworth's Educational Trust. No hands? Thank you. So Councillor Gardner continues. AWE Local Liaison Committee. We have Councillor Gardner and Councillor Michael Bound to continue then. Barlow's Park Management Association, Tadley. Thank you. We have Councillor Carruthers to continue for another year. Basingstoke Air Cadets. No, because that isn't up there. Okay, thank you. That's Councillor Miller to continue. Basingstoke and Dean Community Leisure Trust. Thank you. Councillor Regan to continue. Basingstoke and District Sports Trust Limited. Thank you. That's Councillor Gaskell to continue. Basingstoke Citizens Advice. Thank you. That's Councillor Mackay, Councillor Leeks and Councillor Cousins to continue. Basingstoke Music Festival, we have one vacancy and we have two others. Any comments, any hands? Okay, thank you. So we just have two representatives, Councillor Freeman and Councillor McCormick. Basingstoke Rape and Sexual Abuse Crisis Centre. Okay, thank you. That's Councillor Cooper to continue. Basingstoke Voluntary Action. Thank you. Councillor Terry Reid continues. Basingstoke Youth Action Trust Limited. Thank you. Councillor Simon Bound and Councillor Kim Taylor to continue. Clare School Community Management Committee. Thank you. Councillor G. Falconer to continue. District Councils Network. Thank you. Councillor Rattigan to continue. Everest Community Academy Management Group. Thank you. So Councillor Miller and Councillor Jane Frankham to continue. Four Lanes Community Centre Joint Management Committee. Thank you. Councillor Miller to continue. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Local Government Association. And Councillor Rattigan and Councillor Simon Bound to continue. Hampshire Building Preservation Trust. Thank you. Councillor Paul Miller to continue. Herbert Plantation Local Nature Reserve Management Committee. Thank you. Councillor Isaac to continue. Hurst Management Centre. Thank you. Councillor Michael Bound and Councillor Vox to continue. Integra North Energy. Thank you. Councillor Keating to continue. Carla the Arts, there is a vacancy. Any nominations? No. We move on to Local Government Association National General Assembly. Thank you. Councillor Rattigan to continue. The Loddon Social Enterprise Limited. Thank you. Councillor Cubitt to continue. North Wessex Downs Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. Oh, I have a hand from Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick point. You missed out the Haverstoke and Free Folk Millennium Green Trust.
Thank you. I'm only flagging up the ones where the representatives have to be re-elected, and it's not the case for that one, or just the ones with a star.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So Councillor Paul Miller continues at the North Wessex Downs AONB. North Hampshire Area Road Safety Council. Thank you. Councillor Gardner and McCormick to continue. Pamber Forest Local Nature Reserve Advisory Committee. Thank you, Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Gardner, to continue. Now we have a new one here. It's Patrol, Parking and Traffic Regulations Outside London Adjudication Joint Committee. This is a new one with one vacancy. Do we have any nominations? Councillor Rattigan.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Laura Edwards for this post, if that's possible.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, if we don't have any other hands raised, I will assume then that we are all agreed that Councillor Laura Edwards will represent us on Patrol. Thank you very much. Moving on to Relate North Hampshire. Thank you, Councillor Simon Bound, to continue. Moving on to Vivid, previously Sentinel Housing. Thank you, Councillor Frost, to be the main representative and Councillor Vox to be the deputy. Silchester Roman Town Advisory Panel. Thank you, Councillor Mahaffey. South East England Councils. Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Tadleian District CAB. Thank you, Councillor Michael Bound. Tadleian District Community Association Executive Committee. Thank you, Councillor Vox continues. Testbourne Community Centre. Thank you, that's Councillor George, continue. Tourism South East. Thank you, Councillor David Leeks, to continue. The Trustees of Basingstoke Common. Thank you, that's me, Councillor Cubitt and Councillor Godison, to continue. And Young People's Information. Thank you, that's the last one, and that's Councillor Hannah Golding to continue. Thank you very much. Now I've just been handed a couple of messages and I'm just going to have a little look at them and tell you what they say. First of all, could Councillor Raffel please get into view? We want to see your face, lovely as it is. And also Councillor McCormick as well. I think you've disappeared from view as well. Thank you very much. I'm hoping that officers will be checking.
Madam Mayor, who would like to see my face? I could just do a personal appearance to them if they like.
We would all like to see it all the time, please. We like to see your expressions, thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the third part of the recommendation, which is fairly straightforward. And this one is to approve the appointment of Mr. Chris Evans, who is an independent standards assessor, as chair of the Standards Committee for the remainder of the 2020-2021 municipal year. I'll just pause a moment just in case anybody has anybody else to suggest, but no. Oh, there is a hand. Okay, Councillor Putty.
I move it, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Putty. If you can get used to using your virtual hand, that would be even better. But thank you very much for that. There is no other candidates, so that is approved. Thank you for that recommendation. And finally, we go to the part that was alluded to by Councillor Gavin James, which is the revised calendar of meetings. I believe this isn't written in stone, Councillor James, if you want to take it up again about the timing of that meeting, that committee that you were talking about. Councillor Paul Frankham.
Just a quick one, didn't do anything on reserves because my mum's now a full member. I'm the only reserve on DC, and I did actually have to come off because after 21 years, me and mum have never sat on the same committee. So I did send a message to our leader, but he hasn't responded. So he needs to nominate 2 reserves for development control.
Councillor McCormick, do you have any other reserves to replace Councillor Paul Frankham on development control?
And Jane.
Well, Jane's promoted to full committee in place of Ruth. Paul is standing down, but as yet I don't have a volunteer because we need to check who's had the DC change.
Okay, thank you. Well, if we haven't got full contingent of reserves, I'm sure you can deal with that. That's fine. I think that's something that we'll have to deal with committee by committee as they arise. Okay, thank you very much. So are we all happy with the calendar of meetings as shown on page 191? Councillor Gardner.
My apologies to Councillor Gavin James for the change of time. It was at the request of Democratic Services, with which I agreed. The next meeting will be at 6:30, as will all future meetings.
Excellent result. Thank you very much, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. In a similar vein to Councillor Gardner, is it possible at this time to ensure that in setting the calendar of meetings that full council expects all meetings, committee and full council to begin at 6:30 and none shall take place during the day? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. Right, are there any dissents to the list on page 191 of future meetings for this municipal year? If I don't see any virtual hands coming up, I will assume that we can pass it for now. But as I say, it's not written in stone. Okay, thank you very much. We will take that as approved. Now then, statutory appointments. This is item 11 on the agenda. We have to appoint a returning officer and electoral registration officer. And we seek your approval to appoint Rebecca Emmett as the council's returning officer and electoral registration officer with effect from the 1st of September 2020. Once again, I'll just pause for one moment in case anybody wishes to dissent. Nope, it's therefore approved.
And I second.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12 now, we go to questions from members of the council on notice. And we have 7 questions as shown on your update papers, and I will go through them in turn. So question number 1, please, from Councillor Vaux to the Cabinet Member for Communities, Culture and Partnerships. Councillor Vaux.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So residents in the borough have shown great community spirit and care for our neighbours during lockdown in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Our hearts go out to families and friends of people.
Point of order.
Councillor Sanders.
Madam Mayor, could we go back to the procedure as is written in the Constitution, that members would normally just to refer to the question as being as on the order paper and save ourselves an awful lot of time?
Madam Mayor, can we not go back to that procedure? Otherwise, I've got to go and find out where the wretched document is with the amendments, and then you won't see my face.
Thank you. I think if I could speak, I think we normally leave it to the person asking the question to either read it out or refer to the paper. And so it is entirely up to the questioner. And to be honest, I think sometimes it is a lot easier to hear what the question is so that we can understand the answer. But once again, Councillor Sanders, I will leave it to the questioner. And if he or she wishes to read it out, that is fine. If he or she wishes to refer to the order paper, that is also fine. So I will go back now, please, to Councillor Vaux. Apologies for that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, I did want to read this one out. So I will go back to the second sentence where I was interrupted. So our hearts go out to families and friends of people who have died from COVID-19, each one a tragedy. But we are thankful and appreciative of all the key workers who have supported us with such dedication and self-sacrifice through such troubling times. While national and county data on the spread of the virus is available, we are less clear about our local situation in the borough. There are conflicting reports and misinformation. Please, would the Cabinet Member provide data on the borough's situation, including the rates of positive tests for the virus, occupancy of ICU facilities, recoveries, and how many residents have sadly died from the virus? Please also provide an update on the innovative work at the Basingstoke Hospital to develop an accurate and swift coronavirus test and how this is being taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the councillor for her question.
Firstly, I echo what has been said, and my heart goes out to all families in our borough who have lost a loved one during the coronavirus pandemic. Each loss is indeed an individual tragedy. It has been truly overwhelming to see the community response shown in our borough during this crisis. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our key workers for their tremendous work and dedication to care for our friends, family and neighbours. Indeed, all those requiring care in our great borough. To ensure that everyday services that we often take for granted continue, many have been working longer hours, taking on new responsibilities, not seeing loved ones, and caring for those suffering virus with bravery and compassion. You are all heroes, and we cannot thank you enough. I've also been inspired by the strength of the community spirit we have seen in our borough, from the great work of neighbourhood community groups to people supporting their families, friends, neighbours, to deliveries of food, medicine, or simply a person to talk to. The level of response from groups, residents and businesses wanting to offer their time, skills and expertise to help our most vulnerable residents has proven again what an amazing place Basingstoke indeed is to live. I'd like to thank you all. You may think this is a small gesture, but it makes a huge difference to those you are helping. To answer your question directly, I wanted to provide some local data that we have for the borough. As I'm sure you've all seen reported in the local press, the borough has had a high figure for testing due to the early action Basingstoke Hospital and its testing capabilities. And the local drive-through testing sites in the borough, making it far more convenient for those symptoms to get tested. As of the 23rd of June 2020, there have been 306,210 lab confirmed cases of COVID-19 across the UK, and a total of 42,927 deaths. To put this in a local context, Public Health England data shows that there have been 734 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Basingstoke since the start of the pandemic up until the 21st of June. Up until 12th of June, Office for Statistics shows there has sadly been 114 deaths, including 32 in care homes. The population of our borough is around 176,500 people. The death rate is low in comparison with the average across Hampshire, and therefore, while the number of positive tests is high, this does not correspond with the high death rate. Clearly, the long-term health impact for individuals is less certain. Specifically, at Basingstoke Hospital, Hampshire Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust confirmed the number of COVID-19 positive patients cared for at the hospital to date is 388. And as of a few days ago, there were no positive patients at the hospital. The number of COVID patients cared for at in our intensive care unit in Basingstoke is 43, and the number who have sadly passed away at Basingstoke and Winchester hospitals comes to 160. We should be proud to note that Basingstoke Hospital has been leading the way with COVID-19 testing from the beginning of the pandemic, and our laboratory was one of the first non-Public Health England labs to begin testing for coronavirus back in early March, weeks ahead of everybody else. This has been led by clinical scientist Stephen Kidd, and this has allowed the trust to test the patients and staff and get results more rapidly so that the clinical team can take the best possible action for patients. This has been a huge team effort in the scientists and the laboratory team, to volunteers and academia and industry, as well as the staff on our wards. As well as this great work, the Trust is currently leading a pilot for mobile 20-minute COVID-19 tests, working with a company called Optigen and the Department of Health and Social Care. Not only does the test produce a rapid result, but the equipment can be safely taken to a traditional lab setting, used elsewhere in hospitals and out in the community. The pilot will see the test being used at the front doors of 2 emergency departments in Basingstoke and in Winchester, as well as GP testing hubs and care homes across Hampshire. Receiving results on site will mean people with symptoms will be given immediate certainty as to whether or not they have the virus, and appropriate next steps will be followed as quickly as possible. With all this in mind, we should not forget COVID is still with us. and it is therefore important that we all continue to follow the national guidance that we track and trace, social distancing, regularly washing our hands, and staying alert to the shared surfaces. As a council, we continue to issue regular updates on how this impacts local services and facilities. Once again, I would like to thank our amazing key workers, our council officers, and our incredible community team for putting together with a common goal to support each other and to fight this terrible virus.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bound. I did let you go on a little bit longer than you should have done, as it's such an important subject. I have a few hands up, and I've got a feeling it's because the sound wasn't brilliant from you. We could just about hear what you were saying. Could I just ask Councillor Michael Bound to confirm that that's what your hand is all about, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I couldn't hear any of the answer except for maybe two clear sentences. Could it be put in writing and sent out to us?
I have it here, Madam Mayor, and I'm happy to send it out.
Very good idea. Thank you very much. If the Councillor Gardner, Councillor Jones and Councillor McCormick were putting their hands up for the same thing, can you lower your hands? If you keep them raised, I'll ask you what you want. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that answer as well. I won't be asking about a supplementary, as it was quite a lengthy answer. Okay, let's move on to question number 2, which is from Councillor Kim Taylor to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Enforcement. Councillor Taylor.
As per the order paper, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eaches, can you respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the HWRCs that are dealt with are a county facility. I have contacted HCC and their information forms part of my answer, but just so there's no confusion, Councillor Gavin James also contacted HCC as a county council about this question, and he sent me the answer they gave him. 2 different officers answered. They both gave the same information, but in a different way. So I have used some of Councillor Gavin James's officer's words in my answer. So just to be clear. So since reopening the HWRCs, there's been very high demand, which due to the need to maintain social distancing, many of you will know, led to significant queues and congestion, which led to calls from the waste collection authorities to HCC. And this is everything HCC have told me, for changes to be made to resolve those issues. In response, the County Council introduced a booking system, and that was introduced in a very rapid time frame, and they say it's been successful in removing the queuing issue. They go on to tell me the booking system has been live for just 1 full week. They are monitoring performance, reviewing government guidance, new slots are released each day, and booking only up to 48 hours ahead is preventing sites becoming unavailable for longer periods, so they're looking at that. Residents should not read too much into the 30-minute time slot. For their purposes, they know how many cars can safely be offloaded at each site within this time frame, and a number of people are able to book these slots accordingly. They have already made adjustments to the numbers they're allowed to book, increasing slots available by nearly 20% this week, and they're actively reviewing the 48-hour arrangements and options for allowing booking further ahead. They say it's a fact that while the county responds to this pandemic, sites are only able to operate at 25% of normal capacity, and they hope that the majority of residents will understand that in current circumstances, that's not an unreasonable service. I have gone on to ask them to consider running the sites at additional capacity now, given the relaxing of the 2-metre rule, and they have come back to say they will, of course, be reviewing the latest government announcements and, where possible, adjusting the site operations to open up more capacity and reflect this within the slots available for booking. They go on to say the majorities of booking are done online, with a booking line provided for those who, for whatever reason, are unable to go online. It was never meant to be an alternative for people who cannot book a slot online, and their communications and website gives all of that. In relation to the report mentioned by the Councillor Taylor about Southampton and Portsmouth universities, this relates to stresses on the waste cycle as a whole during the lockdown period. The 300% figure referred to originates from a story run by the Daily Mail on the 3rd of April, where it claims one council says the amount of waste dumped in this manner had gone up threefold. There was no evidence of where that came from, This may be one local authority's experience during the first few weeks of lockdown, but this does not provide reliable or credible evidence of a 300% increase in fly tipping locally or nationally. In fact, the data provided by HEC shows that there has not been an increase in the weight of fly tip material collected by local authorities. And just to finalise, to say there is no excuse for fly tipping. We will investigate, and this council will prosecute where we have the evidence to stamp out this crime. There were 4 successful prosecutions between January and March, and 6 more cases are currently being progressed by the legal services team. I do encourage residents to report fly tipping, because this does then help our officers carry out prosecutions and investigations. The waste incidents cleared by the ops crew has increased since Q2 in 2019. Work is ongoing with the operations team to understand what has changed to lead to increased reporting. It's understood that the change from barrow operatives to mobile vehicle-based crews has led to an increase in reporting, because the crews themselves now have the facilities to be able to report themselves. As before, the tonnage data does not indicate that there's been a significant increase in the amount of fly tip waste. I don't deny that fly tipping continues to be a major local and national issue, or deny the pressures there have been on waste collection and waste disposal, but our conversations on it should not be based on these reports that refer to 300% that have come from a newspaper and not accurate. They should be dealt with on accurate reporting, and that's what we're doing using our figures.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. You won't be surprised to learn that, as with the last one, we've used up all the time for that question. But thank you very much. And we will now move on to question 3, which is Councillor Vox, again to the Cabinet Member for Homes and Families. Councillor Vox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So please would the Cabinet Member update the Council on work to support rough sleepers through the COVID-19 pandemic and provide rough sleepers with sustainable accommodation as lockdown eases.
Thank you. Councillor Tristan Robinson to respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Fox, for your question. The most vulnerable in our borough are always at the forefront of our minds, and as a council, together with the Social Inclusion Partnership, we've had huge successes in recent years reducing rough sleeping and homelessness in our borough. Ahead of lockdown and ahead of the national instruction to support rough sleepers, the council, together with the SIP, ensured every known rough sleeper, which was 6 at the time, had already been offered safe and secure accommodation, plus the necessary support to encourage them to stay off the streets, tailored for each individual. I committed as portfolio holder to ensure that we did everything we could to support those in need and use the pandemic as a tool to engage with all those who need support. In terms of numbers, in addition to the 6 known at the start of lockdown, increasing numbers of single people became at threat of imminent homelessness, as the accommodation arrangements that they had, such as with family and friends, were vulnerable to breaking down. In total, since the 23rd of March, the housing team has worked with 264 single people and some vulnerable couples who were either homeless or at acute risk of losing their accommodation. Of those cases, advice and mediation has enabled over 80% to remain in their accommodation and therefore not to become homeless. We have provided accommodation, emergency accommodation, for 48 homeless households for the same period. 46 of those were single. Of those cases, 17 have been supported into accommodation, such as housing association, private rented, or within our hostels. 14 have since left emergency accommodation to make their own arrangements, such as with family or friends, or to return home. 17 are currently in bed and breakfast, awaiting move on into identified options. But the emergency accommodation has not just comprised B&B. Our registered providers have come forward to assist, and I'd like to thank Vivid in particular and the Community Furniture Project for mobilising at the peak of lockdown restrictions, when virus risks were at a height, to bring forward and furnish 10 units within their stock specifically for homeless people. Sovereign and Clarion also worked to provide move-on accommodation. 2 weeks ago, I committed as portfolio holder to maintaining this support for these people engaging with us and not creating a cliff edge for them to fall out once lockdown is over. So moving forward, we remain committed to ensuring bespoke move-on plans which are tailored to each individual and the resources are put in place with support to enable each of these households in emergency accommodation. More generally, the Council's choice-based letting system will reopen from the 1st of July, and we will fully support vulnerable people in placing bids for suitable properties. Residents have started to move on from May Place, Mary Rose Court and the Joshua Tree and Oakley Lodge in order to free up capacity within these supported housing schemes. Our new Housing First scheme is now online and will deliver 5 new placements. We have already secured suitable properties in the private rented sector and supported people to move in. And at the forefront of these, and the key priority within our new housing and homelessness strategy, is to explore the delivery of a new emergency hostel in the town. I can confirm that a potential site has been identified for a new scheme. Heads of terms have been agreed by a key provider, and a landowner and potential costs are now being developed. I look forward to being able to brief members on this and other new initiatives as they develop. As always, the main feature of our work is to do this in partnership. I'd like to thank the Social Inclusion Partnership, Hampshire officers, Basingstoke officers, MHCLG, Julian House, Two Saints, Home Group, Vivin, Sovereign and the Camrose, without whom none of this work would have been deliverable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, I won't offer a supplementary. That was quite a long, but thank you very much for the comprehensive answer. Moving along to question 4. Can I invite Councillor Regan to unmute his microphone and ask his question to the Leader of the Council? Councillor Regan.
As per order paper, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Councillor Regan. As you know, the Council operates several public toilets around the borough, although the Council is not obviously legally bound to produce or provide public toilets. The Council did not close any of our public toilets during the lockdown, and therefore these toilets have been available throughout that period. However, I understand your anxiety, as many businesses did close during the lockdown, and it did result in a loss of provision for toilets across the borough. Although there was a significant reduction in footfall in our high streets, I understand and appreciate for certain visitors not being able to find facilities was distressing. However, once again, it is important that you realise that we did not close any of our toilets. The Malls, which is managed by JLL on behalf of ourselves, the day-to-day shopping centre management decisions are delegated to them. And due to the coronavirus, social distancing and the effect it had on the Malls, their workforce and their working conditions, JLL decided to close their toilets, which I understand obviously as people were still using the Sainsbury's supermarket for important food and provision would be distressing. However, it is important that you realise that we do not directly run either the Malls or of Festival Place, and those decisions are taken by the management of them. My hope, obviously, is that with Festival Place, the Malls, and the greater loosening of the lockdown and the social distancing, that things will come back to some sort of normality. There is obviously some light at the end of the horizon, because we will see hotels, pubs, cafes opening up as we for sit down and to welcome members of the public. My hope is then that all the facilities will be back to normal, as long as people remember to wash their hands and obviously to keep this pandemic down to the level where we can defeat it. I hope that helps, but of course I'm happy to take a supplementary should you wish to.
Councillor Regan, do you have a supplementary? We're running a little bit out of time on this question, but if you have something urgent to say, please do. Councillor Regan, if you could unmute if you have anything else to say. If not, I'll move on.
Is that unmuted?
Oh, I've got you now. Is that answer satisfactory?
Yeah, it's 3/4 of the way there, and I appreciate it. But I wanted to expand it out, which you did fail to answer, was What about the War Memorial Park and Cemetery? They're a council owner. Will they be reopened?
Thank you. Have you got a quick answer, Councillor Rattigan?
It is unlikely, let's be fair, that we will open new facilities across the borough. We hope that the provision of toilets is sufficient. I've not had that many complaints from the 170,000 residents that we look after, but if you have something that is pertinent to individuals, I'd be happy to help with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to quickly now move on to question 5 and invite Councillor McCormack to give his question to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Enforcement. Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As it's a lengthy question, it will be as per the update paper.
Thank you, that's much appreciated. Can I invite Councillor Eachus to give a compact answer, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll do my best. There's a lot in there. I'll run through it. So with regards to the comment on the collections in Brighton Hill, assuming you mean the 22nd of June as the 21st was a Sunday. The 22nd of June was a recycling day for Brighton Hill. I have had officers review the information. There was no report of issues. There's also no evidence of collections after 6:30, but I can't sit here and discuss specific households. But if Councillor McCormack would like to provide me with further information outside of this meeting regarding specific households or locations, then I can assure you that that can be investigated by the waste team. At this time, we're doing all we can to contain waste volumes in order to reduce the exposure time of crews out on rounds and to ensure available staff are not overwhelmed. Customers with 140 litre bins can leave out up to 2 sacks of side waste next to their black bin, which gives them comparable waste to a customer who have the older 240 litre bins. The council has a clear no side waste policy for black bins. We always have had that. And as I say, the 2 additional sacks are allowing providers similar, if not greater capacity than the 240 bin. Waste in excess of 2 sacks will not be collected. We do accept side waste for recycling. We always have done. We continue to accept side waste for recycling from all households, as long as obviously if it's big pieces of cardboard that can be left near the bin. But if not, if it's loose, it needs to be in clear bags next to their recycling bin on recycling day. In relation to additional bins for larger families who are recycling all they can but require additional capacity, or for example, customers with medical reasons, they can apply online for additional capacity. We have an additional capacity policy, we always have had, and in line with our existing policy on additional capacity, applicants will need to meet the agreed policy and guidelines and will be assessed on their own merits. I was going to go into the policy. I don't think I need to. If anybody wants to ask me about it, I'm happy to email them or discuss it on the telephone with them. Where Councillor McCormack has said in his question regarding a family of 5 who were refused one because 5 they could have a lone bin in this pandemic, then if he wants to provide me with details of the specific household, I can respond to him on that. Then going on to AWC, which I know is a big thing for everybody, and the question does ask me when we are going back online for AWC. That was always done in relation to COVID-19. We're definitely going back to weekly waste collections. We did it to cope with the staffing issues, for example, when members of our bin crew self-isolate. It is a temporary measure. And just to confirm, pardon?
When?
Yeah, well, let me finish. I'm about to tell you. I'm trying to rush through it with time. We've been regularly reviewing this, and from mid-July, we will start to look at how we can bring the weekly waste collections with an aim to set a date for when this service will resume. By middle of July, we would have carried out 2 full collections of garden waste, and will be in a strong position to then give you a date to bring the weekly waste collections back online and be confident that we can sustain a reliable service for the duration.
Supplemental, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Just a minute. Thank you very much. Now, that was an extremely long question and a long answer. So can you do a very quick supplementary, because we are rather running out of time for the time given.
Point of the question was that the policy is being contravened by the call centre. I haven't had an answer to that. I would also like a comment on whether the portfolio holder finds it unacceptable that somebody is having to take their household waste to the waste recycling centre at Alton because it's been refused to be collected.
So just going
Councillor
back,
Eachus, do you want to actually, if it's about a private person, do you want to do this by email so that you can go into it?
Absolutely. But just in relation to the policy and the contact centre did not make those decisions. I can assure you of that. The waste team do. I've seen how it works. There's an online form. If people can't get online, they ring up. But it's the contact centre do not deny that. They will read out the policy and they'll tell people, but they don't make the final decision. And you know, I answered Councillor Taylor's question in detail about the HWRCs, and I've been pressurising when Hampshire closed the HWRCs to reopen them. I'm always trying to communicate with them in that regard. But as I say, if anybody wants to ask specific household and specific questions, then please do to me directly, because I'm always happy to work with the team, and the team will always respond once it's been investigated.
Thank you very much. And obviously, as Councillor Each has said, you can continue that conversation by email and be more specific. Councillor McCormack, can I move to your next question, please, which is to the Leader of the Council?
Yes, and that's going to be as per the order paper.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCormack. Yeah, no, I accept that we did have some technical issues with our supplier on the changes of the tariff back in October 2019. Unfortunately, as you rightly point out, there were a number of customers who were charged during the free period, and nothing I can say can rectify that. But what I can give you some reassurances that our supplier is dealing with those issues. The inconvenience that's been caused to our customers, they can have a refund process which is in place, and most of the refunds that we do put back to either visitors or residents is within 48 hours. And if anybody does believe that they've been overcharged, the parking team will look into those things. As for the freedom of information request, now I totally accept this is a very valid way to find out information on a specific subject. But the freedom of information dates back to 2016, which is four years ago. And to have done all of that work would have taken a number of hours. But therefore, the information can't be provided. However, we've now instigated a separate recording system for all refunds that will allow us to provide that information to you in the future and to our residents. We're committed to providing the best car parking possible. And as some of you have been in town since the easing of lockdown will have seen how much work we've done on the central car park and the additional work that we are doing in Feathers Yard to produce a electric hub there for our visitors. We are doing as much as we can to help as many as we can across the borough with their parking, wherever they choose to park within our Basingstoke and Dean's facilities. So rest assured, we are not resting on our laurels, and I accept that when people have been overcharged, they have the right to get the refund, and you are right to point it out when there are mistakes by this administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormack, do you want to come back with a supplementary, or do you want to move on to your next question? Can you unmute, please?
I didn't think I'd muted myself. I'm perfectly fine with that answer. I'll move on to the next question.
Thank you. This is to the Leader again. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to just hand you over to Councillor Raffel initially, and then I will pick up some of the further points from Councillor McCormack about what we can do together to improve our relationship or our conversations with Hampshire County Council. Councillor Raffel.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, can I thank Councillor McCormack for his two questions? May I take them in reverse order? The second is about Brighton Hill Roundabout, lack of consultation, concern over underpasses being closed, and various sort of cycling and pedestrian issues that may arise from it. What I've arranged for him and others who may be interested, like neighbouring ward councillors, is that they will be able to have a meeting with the technical officers who are designing the roundabout to discuss why they've come to that conclusion, and so that they can raise their concerns and perhaps see whether it is an acceptable compromise or not. But the overall point about lack of consultation, I accept. And if I can now move back to Chapel Hill, I've made it clear to our officers, who, as you can imagine, are not the Transport Authority, that I thought the scheme was potty. I then went and we had a meeting with the county council officers, and I said I just couldn't agree with it. I couldn't understand how a ward that's got limited number of exits and is also contains the historic Kingsclear Road that is one of the main thoroughfares into the borough is suddenly being cut off. And they said, oh, well, it's happened before and it didn't cause any problems. I said, well, it still doesn't mean it's right. So they said, oh, well, Councillor Westbrook supports it. And I said, well, what's that got to do with it? You've got to ask people. I've been told since he may not necessarily support it. I'm sure he may want to say something about this. And then they said, well, we're doing it anyway. We didn't quite use those words, but that's what they're doing. The whole method of dealing with us is not as I would like it. And I've made it clear to our officers, and I've made it clear to them that they may be the Transport Authority, but they're 50-50 partners with us. And so I know that the chairman of the EPH committee will be inviting the county council officers to come and attend EPH, hopefully in the autumn, if we can get physically into a room together, and so that EPH can discuss with them. And thereafter, I want to have stage meetings throughout every year to make sure that we understand what they're up to and why they're up to it, and also ask them, as I did when I spoke to them recently, why some of the major schemes around Basingstoke simply haven't happened, such as Eastrop roundabout, such as two-way traffic at the top of town, because it's just not good enough. And then they suddenly see a bit of money being flashed by the government and can't wait to spend it in a way that is completely unnecessary. And as I say, I've been consulting with the local ward councillors. Councillor Harvey and I have spoken about this, and I believe that they share my views, which is highly sceptical that there's any benefit in this whatsoever. Perhaps the leader wants to take up the thread.
Thank you very much. Actually, before we go back to either Councillor McCormick or Councillor Rattigan, could I think we have a point of clarification here, as you kind of slightly second guess what Councillor Michael Westbrook thought about everything. So can I invite Councillor Michael Westbrook to just comment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, Councillor Raphael is partially right, Madam Mayor, but can I clarify that I wasn't the decision maker on Chapel Hill, and Councillor Raphael's fellow Conservatives at County Council were, and can also clarify, Madam Mayor, that Councillor Raphael's own Conservative government funded these schemes at very short notice as a response to COVID-19. And it's his government that said it had to be done at pace and without the usual level of consultation. Now, in supporting my residents, I've ensured that their concerns have been raised at the highest level and mitigated where possible. And I've requested and received assurances that the scheme will be monitored and can be removed at speed within 48 to 72 hours if necessary. And it is a pop-up trial. Now, I have to say that I'm surprised that Councillor Raphael objects to the trial, bearing in mind we've declared a climate emergency and put in place a cycle strategy which falls right within his own portfolio. This has all happened under the government's emergency action active travel plan fund, Madam Mayor. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fine. I think probably we've explored that one enough for now. We've run out of time anyway for it. So thank you everyone for your questions and answers. They were very interesting. And if I could now move on to item 13 on the agenda, which is questions to the Chair of Cabinet and/or a committee. And the minutes of the meetings are listed on the agenda. They've been published. Are there any questions arising from any of these? Can you just put up a hand? Councillor Ian Tilbury.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Yes.
This is a novelty. I've had this, the third meeting I've had this week, and the other two, well, I've been shut out twice. It's the system's crashed. So, yeah, basically a question to the chair of the cabinet, well, obviously the leader of the council in this case. It relates to the waste and recycling client function review. At the MAP meeting, it was recommended that the members note the report's findings and in principle approve the transition of the joint client function from Hart District Council to Basingstoke and Dean on terms to be mutually agreed by the 29th of May 2020, which obviously passed some time ago. And or if that agreement could not be reached by then, a dual client function will be created at BDBC for the management of waste and recycling service in BDBC. Could you give us an update on where we are with that? Because obviously May some time ago now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tilbury. I think perhaps my cabinet member for environment and could answer that. Councillor Eaches.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the date was for Hart Council to come back to us as to their position. We had some back and forth with them. We had a very helpful meeting last week, so things are progressing. We've got another meeting in 2 or 3 weeks' time. The date was never to have the client teams changed by that point. It was to put a marker down to our partner to deal with that and allow them to come back to us, which they did literally on that date. So we are now moving forward with that, and as soon as I'm able to update the council, I will do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question and for the answer. Are there any other questions on any of these items, on any of these agenda minutes as listed on the order paper? No more hands? Okay, so we will take that as done. So we move on to the other 2 items on the agenda. There are no confidential or exempt items. So I have to say that concludes our meeting. Thank you all very much for your participation and cooperation. We did it. And it's been lovely to see you all.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good night to everybody. Thank you.